everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Joli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And today I'm going to be going through everything you need to know to keep your Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma plants happy, as well as showing you how to propagate them to make new little baby plants. Really quickly as well, I just wanted to let you all know that I have just joined Patreon. There's absolutely zero pressure to join if you don't want to, but if you do fancy some extra bonus planty content, I'll pop all of the details in the description box below. Right, let's get into the video. So, Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma, commonly known as Monstera Minima, isn't actually related to the Monstera at all. It just gets its nickname from its iconic splits in the leaves. It's honestly one of my fastest growing plants. I can't believe how quickly it grows. I got this one about 6 months ago as a tiny cutting, and you can't really see on camera because it's got so big now, but it's actually growing off its moss pole. It's also just such an easy plant to look after, so I would say it's definitely a great beginner plant. Although these plants can be fairly adaptable when it comes to light, they're going to do best in what's known as bright indirect light, which is pretty much like the room I'm in now. I don't know how well you can tell on camera, but it's really bright, but it doesn't receive too much direct sunlight itself, so the leaves don't run the risk of burning, because if you do put them in a spot that's too bright, they are gonna potentially burn. They're quite sensitive. And then again, if you put them in conditions that are too dark, what you're probably going to notice is, firstly, their growth will slow right down, but also the spacing of their leaves on the vine is going to become a lot more stretched out and not kind of as condensed and bushy and healthy looking as you would like. On that note as well, it's really important to make sure that you're keeping your plant's leaves clean, just because a layer of dust or dirt or anything like that can actually stop them absorbing the light that they need in order to grow healthily. This is particularly important if you are keeping your plant in slightly lower light conditions, because it will essentially be the same as them receiving virtually no light at all and can do your plant a lot of damage. The other reason that you need to keep their leaves clean is because it makes them much more susceptible to pests if they're covered in dust. It's just a really good way to also pest check your plant. I, for example, will take my plant every week or so, and I'll just give it a good dust down, get a microfiber cloth or a damp sponge or something like that, and just give both sides of the leaves a really good wipe over, just to check that there's no spider mites, thrips, anything like that, especially at this time of year. This one actually had thrips a little while ago, and oh my goodness, they spread so quickly. They affected loads of my plants. I've still got some damage on the back of these leaves, and they can be such a pain to get rid of just because I wasn't as vigilant as I should have been with my pest checking. So I would highly recommend doing that on a regular basis. When it comes to watering for these ones, you do just have to be quite careful that you're not giving them too much, because they are very susceptible to issues caused by overwatering, such as root rot, yellowing leaves, dropping leaves, all that sort of stuff that you really don't want to have. So what I'll always do is I'll always wait for the top layer of soil to pretty much completely dry out before I go ahead and water them again, just to make sure that I'm not saturating the soil with stuff that the roots don't need and can't deal with. It's also really important to make sure that you're using a pot that's got drainage. I've just decorated this pot. It is just a nursery pot, but if you're using a ceramic pot or anything like that, if it doesn't have drainage holes of its own, then I would always say keep your plant in its nursery pot, put it into the pretty pot, and every time you water, take it out, give it a thorough soak through, and then wait for it to properly drain, just because, again, water collecting around the roots that can't drain away, that it doesn't need, are going to cause issues such as root rot. When it comes to watering over the growing season, it's a really good idea to add some fertilizer into your watering routine, just to help make sure that your plant is as healthy and happy as it can be, because it helps to just support any new and existing growth. I did make a video a while ago about how you can make your own fertilizer, but there's loads of great shop bought fertilizers as well. I'm currently using liquid gold leaf, which is really great, and my plants are really happy. I've said this before as well, but if you've had a plant for quite a while and you've never fertilized it before, I would personally recommend, from experience, easing it into fertilizing quite gently instead of going in with a full hit and expecting your plant to be fine, because sometimes it can kind of be like nutrient overload and it can send them into shock if they're really not used to it. So yeah, I would say start with a little bit less than it says and gradually build it up over time. It's also really important to say that if you've got a propagation or a cutting with a very small, not very well established root system, oh, there's a wasp. Go away, leave me alone. Yeah, go on. Yes, out. Oh my God, that was the biggest wasp I've ever seen. What I was saying is if the root system isn't very well established yet, I can't remember how far I got through saying this, but don't fertilise it yet just because it can cause lots of issues. It can cause your cutting to die. It's just not a good idea. When it comes to humidity, these plants aren't going to complain as much as some other tropical plants if it's not really, really high. Anything above about 55% would be fine for them. However, just to keep them looking really lush and healthy and the best they can be, I always think upping the humidity is a really good idea. I keep the humidity in here at about 65%. Sometimes it goes up higher. If the temperature's higher, I will always crank up the humidity as well. If you don't have high enough humidity, the main thing that you're probably going to start to notice is browning on the leaves, browning tips, browning edges. Your plant's just not going to look as good as it could be. So I would personally say the higher humidity, the better. And with temperature, as I say, these plants are fairly hardy. They've got quite a big range of temperatures they can tolerate. Anything between about 15 and 30 degrees Celsius will be fine for them. However, the lower the temperature, the slower they're going to grow. So I try to keep the temperature around kind of 23, 24 degrees, and they're really happy with that. If the temperature does go a lot higher, I will up. Oh my God, I thought the wasp was back. It's only a fly. I will up the humidity to counteract the drop in humidity that usually happens when the temperature's higher. Did that make sense? Whatever the temperature of your home, it's just a really good idea to make sure that it's as steady as possible so that your plant isn't constantly having to adjust to fluctuations. Also, in terms of cold drafts, they absolutely hate that. That's another thing they're very sensitive to. So when you're finding a position for your plants, just make sure you're not putting it next to an air vent, a drafty door, a drafty window, anything like that, as again, that can cause yellowing, it can cause dropping leaves, and ultimately, if the draft is very bad, it can cause plant death. These plants are also so easy to propagate to make new plants. I've tried it in quite a few different ways over the years, and the one that I've had the highest success rate has been sphagnum moss. I've tried it with perlite, water, leca. I've tried it quite a few ways, but the highest success rate and the quickest way that I've found has been sphagnum moss. So what you want to do is pretty much directly behind where the petiole joins the stem of the plant, you'll notice these little brown bumps, and they're what's known as nodes, and that is where your roots are going to grow from. So when you take a cutting, for example, if I was to take this top cutting here, I would want to chop just there, and this would be my cutting here. So I've got one of the bumps on there. I've got a place for my roots to grow, and then with the sphagnum moss, what I've done, I've just got a plastic cup, and I'll take it out and show you actually, I haven't checked it yet. But I just use damp sphagnum moss, keep it in a warm, humid place with lots of light, and you should notice it starts to happen fairly quickly. I think I started this one about maybe 3 weeks ago or something, and I can see just from the side of the cup that it's already got a nice little root system forming. So you can see it's got a really nice long root there, and then another little one on this side here, and then a new growth point there. So that is where my new growth will be coming from. So I would say probably in about 2-3 weeks this will be ready to be potted up, and I will have a brand new plant. But yeah, I really hope that was clear. I'm sorry if it wasn't. If anyone's got any questions about any of this, then do feel free to comment them down below and I'll get back to you. But I really hope that this video was useful. If it was, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.